Welcome to Youth Diversion's webinar on digital parenting in the age of COVID-19. My name is Joanna Conrad, and you are viewing part 4 of a 5-part series. My guest today is Kevin Cosgrove, who is an IT specialist and the focus of our discussion on Parental Controls 101. Hi, Kevin, how are you?
Doing great, Joanna. How's things with you today?
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me. Today, we're going to start off by looking at cybersecurity. Can you tell me what your definition of cybersecurity is and what it means for parents?
Well, what I know it to be and what the average person thinks of it is a lot of the problems surrounding why people don't actually do a lot with this stuff. It's not even that they don't take it serious. They're kind of overwhelmed or even filled with kind of half information that makes it seem more intimidating. As far as cybersecurity for parents, where it's obviously very important is protecting your kids online from what they're doing, what they're looking up, the kind of websites or interactions or even who they're chatting with. That's one part of it, of course, but the other part of it is even just normal day-to-day behavior that we think of posting a family picture or vacation picture up on social media. You know, the information that we're giving out when we sign up on websites, all of those things combined make up a total package of what cybersecurity should be, not just about the making sure the kids don't see adult content on the internet. So it's a little bit broader than what the average person thinks, and it's broader but not more complicated. And that complication of what people feel is out there is really what part of the problem is.
So how would you say that parents can better understand cybersecurity?
The best way, and actually it's sheer coincidence, and of course we're doing this as a COVID presentation for parents at home during this, because this pandemic is a good way to actually look at some of the security issues that a lot of people have. When we're dealing with security and dealing with viruses, we talk a lot with viruses of herd protection. If all the people around you are safe from a virus, that makes you also safe. With cybersecurity and information security, if all the people around you are protecting your information, you're not putting up your name in posts, or they're not leaving their computers insecure, so when they get hacked, somebody inadvertently ends up with all your information. They end up with your email, they end up with your name, or they end up with information about your children because they have insecure practices of what they do. So that herd immunity concept, it really does apply to just regular security and protection as a whole.
It's interesting you say that and how that relates to digital privacy. You mentioned passwords and computers getting hacked. Sometimes parents might not necessarily think that this is something that they need to be concerned about for their children or for their home computer. Do you think that it is, and why?
It definitely is, and kind of what we were just talking about is protecting not just your own information, but people around you. So if I hear in the IT industry, and I've been at this over 20 years, a lot of people will constantly tell me, well, I don't need a password on my computer, or it's not that big of a deal. Even if you don't have anything that you think is worth hacking, most people associate that with financial stuff. You know, if you don't do any banking online, there's no real reason why you need to secure your computer or worry about security. But if I get into your email, I can see your contacts, I can see who your relatives are, I can see some of the interactions that you have with them. If I am able to hack any of your social media, Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or any of the other ones, I get to see the people that you're talking with, I get to see all that information. So as yourself worrying about your security, well, if your grandparents were hacked, somebody saw all their social media information, they know information about your kids, their grandkids, they can find out information about schools, they can find out information about who their peers are. There's a lot of stuff that can be given away that's not just about whether or not you do banking online. So it is a holistic approach that you need to take when it comes to security. stuff with passwords, what type of information you give out, and what kind of security you have on the devices that you're using. So it's not just about securing everything, the focus shouldn't just be on password everything with some crazy password and that's it. It's more about controlling what information is out there, and when you're parenting, talking to the kids about what information they're putting out there, because it does involve identity theft. It does involve crimes with children, anything from the sexting to human trafficking. All of those things start with just little pieces of information that somebody has worked their way into.
So obviously the concern here is that this information would get into the wrong hands for the wrong reasons, right? We're talking about either predators, hackers, or whoever ultimately looking to obtain personal information to either find out someone's whereabouts, to find out more information about them, to maybe lead them to their whereabouts, or to potentially scam them and ultimately maybe blackmail them in one way or another. Am I right?
Absolutely, because each one of these things is just a little piece of information. And a lot of this, once it's out on the internet, it's hard to get that information back. It's hard to stop, some of the normal things that are occurring on a day-to-day basis, like websites getting hacked or information leaks. We're constantly seeing stuff in the news every day about that. It's hard to stop that stuff, but if one website with your name and your phone number gets hacked, another website might have your phone number and your username, and another website might have your username and your photo. All of these things eventually get put together by hackers in lists, passwords that you've used in the past, photographs and who's tagged in them. It doesn't require that we constantly joke about, with computer security, if the more you learn, the more you feel like being in a cave with a tinfoil hat on. It doesn't actually require that kind of paranoia. No more paranoia than you lock your home when you leave the house. That's not a stress or anxiety issue for the average person. This is how computer security should also be. Having a regular password, or kind of toning down the information you give out on the internet, and just doing things that are common sense once you learn about what the effect they can have are.
Would you say hacking happens often? And if so, do you have any stats that you can share with respect to how often it happens?
I don't have stats on how often it happens, but you almost don't need them. You can just look up just about any webs or internet news source that you can find. And on a regular basis, major corporations are having their entire database of all their customers leaked out. Their names, their phone numbers, their social insurance numbers. This is occurring constantly, and it's not just people at home with their home computers that need to worry about it. We're talking professional, high-level corporations with full-blown trained IT people. It's hard to keep this stuff out. Just like, if you think of whoever engineered Fort Knox, there's some other guy who knows how to break into Fort Knox. So
Right.
it's a constant battle with computer security of an arms race back and forth. So knowing that that's the level that these corporations have to deal with just to keep their information safe, people at home, they're usually content with putting a virus scanner in their system, and that's about as far as they take it as far as computer security goes. It's more about controlling the information, and that's something that definitely needs to be taken a lot more seriously, instead of just whether or not you have a virus scanner.
Right. And when we talk about controlling access and security and even protecting, let's say, Fort Knox, some might assume that their Wi-Fi security is protected like Fort Knox with a password, let's say, right? That they're keeping themselves protected. But we know that there's such a thing called entry point hackers, where ultimately that's how hackers get access into someone's system. How does this happen if a password is in place?
Well, even if a password's placed, there's a lot of faults within the security measures that are part of Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi itself is considered a convenience technology. It's to substitute for just plugging a wire in. When you're dealing with just a regular network that's all wired together, the only way somebody hacks their way in is to physically be in that building, plug into one of those wires. With Wi-Fi, you can do that from out on the road, and nobody even knows you're out there. With hacking tools and everything else, they can get by some of these security levels that are placed in routers. And that also includes other internet devices called IoT devices. That's Internet of Things. So with IoT devices like baby monitors or driveway cams or security cameras, the security level and software that runs inside these machines, oftentimes these companies abandon them not long after manufacturing. It might be an inexpensive webcam that you have from overseas. They made it 2 years ago. The company's not offering updates, and that security, they figured out already how to get past it, and we're not updating those devices while we're still using those on the internet. So all of the stuff that encrypts and secures the passwords, the information of how to get through that encryption and how to hack their way into it, eventually people will figure out. And that's why you see those constant updates when you're running a computer. It's they're mostly security related, but you can't do that with a lot of other devices, and people don't even think about it. So the router is one of those things that people usually buy off the shelf in the store, and after using it for several years, they've never even thought or knew that they even had to do an update on it to update the security level that's inside of that. So with a lot of these devices running old security features, it leaves a lot of vulnerability to people with devices that they're using at home. And most Wi-Fi routers, when you buy them right from the store, they'll either have the word admin or the word password as their password on the router. So unless you get in there and actually change some of the default settings, anybody from the internet can modify your router. If your kids are really savvy and know how to mess around with Wi-Fi, they can get in and change some of the settings. So unless you change the administration password on the Wi-Fi, anybody can get in there and change that. And most of them, we're getting to a point where some of the companies, when you buy a router off the shelf of the store, the very first thing it asks you is to make a new password. Not all of them are doing that, so a lot of parents are going to have to kind of do that one on their own. And then once, of course, they get into the actual router, they can set up whatever password they want, and we'll get into it more in our next part, but that router is actually central to all your security that you're going to be doing on Wi-Fi at home. You can use that to control the internet. I've heard many parents, suddenly the power switch gets hit about 10 minutes before dinner time. There's no Wi-Fi, and all of a sudden everybody's coming down the stairs wondering what's going on. You can do that right at homework time. You can do that dinner time. But you can also do it right through the router itself without necessarily unplugging everything. Most regular home routers that you can buy at a retail store, they have already included is parental controls. So you can actually get in there and you can set a schedule that every night at 7 o'clock, you can shut down the Wi-Fi, you can monitor where it goes, you can set up a whole bunch of other settings, but getting into that Wi-Fi and securing it, that's the part that you have to start with before you even get to further looking into security, or whether you're monitoring your kids or you're using different applications, a third-party application to monitor. A lot of it is going to start at least with the router. So being able to log in there and able to control that one piece of hardware, that's going to be key as far as the computer side of home security with your children.
How often would you say we should be changing our passwords?
For the average person, it's a lot of work. Even myself working in IT, I have pages upon pages of accounts and passwords and everything else. If I had to change those on a constant basis, I'd be spending at least 3-4 days out of a month just doing passwords and accounts. But your main ones, the ones that are mostly targeted, that have the most information about you, or even control your other accounts. If you have a Facebook account, and to validate or send you email, they're sending it over to your email account. Well, your email account is going to be the one that you want to make sure stays secure. If your Facebook is hacked, you want to get back in, they're going to send notifications over to your main email account. If that account gets hacked, they're going to have control over a lot of things all at once. So the more high priority it is to yourself, those are accounts I would recommend at least once every 6 months to go in and change the password and make sure that the information in there is even up to date. Most hackers, when they get these lists, they haven't actually done the work. A lot of hackers are actually pretty lazy. So what has happened is through the years, they build up lists of accounts and names and passwords that people are likely to use, or even from an old email that they hacked from a company. They'll take those lists and they'll be sold over and over and over on the internet. Most times, those passwords that have been hacked 2 years ago from some account that you don't use anymore, those lists are still out there, and those people will find those lists even though it's 2 years later, and they will try that password on other accounts with your name attached to it. So if we're talking about somebody hacking a Facebook account and your password is Red Wings because that happens to be your favorite team, 9 months and longer later on, they'll take that email and your password that you've used in the past, and they'll try it on a bank site, they'll try it on a government site, they'll try it all over the place and see if you're one of those people that uses your password over and over in the same places. So the vulnerability of this website that was hacked 4 years ago, the information is publicly available up on the internet, and someone will take that information and they'll see if they can work their way into some of your accounts. So changing those passwords instead of letting them sit year after year is definitely vital to everything that's going on with all the hackers and companies and information leaks that are happening out always.
What about Wi-Fi in public places? Parents oftentimes buy their children phones with a data package that doesn't include, let's say, doesn't have much data, and so they're forced to reuse Wi-Fi. Is this an issue? Is it a concern, and why?
It can be an issue. We're dealing with kind of the same problem that I was just referring to with home devices. A home router is often not updated or anything else unless the public Wi-Fi that you're using, you can have some degree of confidence that there's an IT team looking after it. It's not just a local restaurant who has a router that they let you share. If that's level of security, if you have a level of confidence that it's a safe Wi-Fi hotspot to use, you should be okay. But in that, I would still be cautious about the type of information that you're doing while you're using the public Wi-Fi. I personally would not use a public Wi-Fi to log into my bank and do some transactions. I'll save that for home where I know it's secured.
So when we talk about the digital world and we talk about the Internet of Things and all the things that our kids are exposed to, a common term that comes up and one that maybe not everyone is familiar with quite yet is digital resiliency. So what do you think that parents need to educate themselves about when it comes to digital resiliency, and really what would you say that it is?
The first thing with even getting through any of this, and especially for the parents, to set up some digital resiliency with the internet and the security problems that we're having, one of the first things that I would recommend for any of the parents that are actually watching this is they have to let go of that myth or that disbelief, the false belief that kids always know more than what the parents know about computers, and the kid down the street always knows more, and it's not actually true. Kids aren't afraid. As parents, I think maybe we spent too much time watching TV or watching movies where, just with a click of a button, we can ruin our entire computer. Kids have grown up with them and they're a lot more comfortable with them. And that comfort just lets them get more used to it. Whereas with adults, that anxiety level that they have that this is too complicated or they'll break something or they just don't understand what it is, before they even start looking into this stuff, they've already stopped themselves from being able to keep up to what their kids are doing. So if they let go of that idea that the kid knows more, they'll probably be a lot more successful in trying to keep up to what the kids are up to. But with the digital resiliency, it's the key to it is, of course, with programs like your own, it's not really about the hardware. We can give advice of adding hardware in or secure hardware. We can give advice of what to do on the computer. But before any of that even begins, it's really about behavior with the parents, behavior with the kids, what they're actually doing with this stuff. Because no matter what the level of security, we're talking kids at home and parents are trying to watch out for them, or myself at work doing IT work, or even a high level corporation, it really does come down to behavior. I often, with some of the lectures I've done, I've told people, think of it like a home burglar system. If you spend $10,000 on a home security alarm to secure yourself, someone bad knocks at the door and you open the door. Well, the answer is not a $20,000 security system. The answer is learning some behavior of when not to open the door. So behaviors of what type of information the kids should or shouldn't be putting up online, trying to rein back some of the social media information that might be out there already, and securing the stuff that you actually have, keeping passwords, changing your passwords. As far as digital resiliency, the best security feature that you can actually look for is trying to make the information that you do have out there, and unfortunately we have a lot because this is the society we live in now. We're doing banking online, buying online. We're even now with COVID, we're working online, studying online, doing meetings online. This is our reality that we're working in. So the amount of information that's out there, it can be compiled together and we can get a lot of information about an individual. What we need to try to do to make things a little more secure beyond the securing your hardware or beyond keeping applications that monitor stuff, what we need to do is to actually make that information that we provide online disjointed. If you have your Facebook email that they contact you with and the password that you commonly use on Facebook, if that email and password are used nowhere else, if somebody was to hack Facebook, it doesn't matter. That information can't be used at your bank. It can't be used at your credit company. It can't be used anywhere else. They have that account. You can go through some recovery steps and get that account back under your control. If you're using the same email everywhere you go, and they can put together different information about you. One website has your birthday, one website has other information. All of these pieces can be put together, but if you're leaving disjointed information, it's going to protect you more than anything else that you can think of. Oftentimes with companies are signing up for a service, or you hit the I agree when you make a new Facebook account. A lot of that legal information in there is to protect the company from you suing them in case they get hacked. The problem is they're probably going to get hacked at some point. If they do, you know your information is going to be leaked out into the public somehow. But if that information is isolated, it's going to protect you a lot more than just changing your passwords. A lot of people don't actually know with websites and user agreements, and you're signing up for a new service or something, they want a new email, you can make up disposable emails with different programs to provide a single use email that's not used anywhere else. But what a lot of people don't know in filling out these forms for online services, or even if it's a Shoppers Drug Mart rewards card, the information that you give out to these companies, most people don't know that you don't have to provide them legally identifying information unless you're signing up to the police website for a records check, or you're doing stuff online with the government. The information you provide usually doesn't have to legally be accurate. So you can use an alias, you can use a different name, you can provide a substitute address that's nearby but not your own home address. You only need to provide that legal information when you're dealing with government or law law enforcement or possibly a financial institution. But whether or not whatever date is your actual birth date really isn't Facebook's business. So you don't have to give that information out, or you can use modified information. Whatever information it is you use, especially if you use an alias, make sure you record all of that so it doesn't get forgotten what pretend birth date you actually want to use. The digital resilience is trying to get control over all of this stuff and just kind of rein it in. Especially with kids, the thoughts of programs like Keep Your Private Privates. We teach kids in school nowadays that stuff that you put up on the internet, it's up there permanently, so you really need to be cautious about what you put out there. A lot of parents and adults, they haven't had that rate from the school level. So the information, they might not be putting up anything as embarrassing as some of the stuff that the kids might put up online, but they put up stuff that's more dangerous. They're putting up all information about different aspects of their life. And that can always be used to fake emails or fake phone calls or any other types of scams. So you need to rein that stuff in and have a little more control over what we're giving out on the internet.
Right. Digital resiliency to us, well, what we aim to educate when we educate or teach kids about digital resiliency is ultimately for them to understand and for parents to understand that there is a high chance that your child may come into contact with something or someone or come across something inappropriate, or they might come into harm's way online, right? And it's just about preparing them for that and providing them with safeguards so that they know what to do if and when they do come across either content that's inappropriate, or someone says something to them, or they see something that makes them feel uncomfortable. They know what to do about it and they're better able to respond to it. I want to thank you, Kevin, for providing such valuable information to our parents who are joining us to really find out about information when it comes to technology and how they can better equip themselves and their homes to protect personal and private information, but also for them to be aware of some of the ways that it can go wrong. Our next webinar, we're going to dig a little bit deeper with Kevin to find out how parental controls come into play. We encourage you to look through our website for additional information and to contact our office for additional support services.